My name's Dada. I am the CEO and founder of Uncloak. We are a cybersecurity company based on EOS. I'm extremely excited to be here today. I've been to far too many after parties and I'm starting to feel the weight of it happening. Let me see if I can press this button. Okay, does anyone know what this is? This is a Commodore 64. Does anyone know what a Commodore 64 is? One guy over here, wonderful. Four guys. If anyone who knows what a Commodore 64, you're obviously going through a midlife crisis right now. Okay, so Commodore 64, I used to program games for Commodore 64 when I was 9 years of age. And at the age of 16, I begun to hack and break into a couple of systems because I couldn't get a girlfriend. And from that time onwards, I started to work for KPMG because I broke into KPMG, and then I had to work for KPMG or they would take me to the police. And so by working with KPMG, I broke into Citibank in the UK, also broke into Lloyds of London and Millfield Insurance on behalf of KPMG, setting up the UK's first ethical hacking department. And ethical hacking basically means you get paid legally by a company to break into their system. And so that's what I was doing. So the reason why I've created Uncloak, and Uncloak means to unveil or to take off. And one of the things that we want to do is that the world's largest infrastructure problem is cybersecurity and threats and data breaches. We have to understand now that on a daily basis, for example, there are over 25,000 attacks that are reported every single hour. Last year alone, in 2017, there was 4.1 billion attacks and breaches that were actually reported. These are ones that are reported, and I can guarantee that this is probably 100, 1 to 100 ratio in terms of ones that were actually reported and compared to what's actually happening. So one thing I found out is every single time that we worked with a client, and I run a cybersecurity firm in the UK, I work with a local government and also national government providing cybersecurity. One thing I found, every single time that we went to a client to perform a cybersecurity check for them, by the time that we produced a report, the very next day, a new threat would come out. And this was getting a bit silly. So one thing I thought, why don't we create a system that continually protects your network? And so we've started to look around and say, okay, right, what can we do and how can we build this and how can we go about building this? And so we've been building a threat detection system, which I'll go into a little bit more detail with 2 minutes and 26 seconds left. So what our system basically does, it does three things. The very first thing it does is that it's able to tell you what weaknesses you have. So if you're running a Windows machine or Solaris, Linux, Notepad, anything with an IP address attached to it, we're able to tell you what threats and what vulnerabilities exist right now. Now, the difference between a threat and a vulnerability is this. A vulnerability is a weakness. So a weakness is like having a hole in your roof. If you have a hole in the roof, the rain can come in and that can get damage your furniture. A threat, however, is when you have rain. Rain isn't dangerous unless it gets to the hole in your roof. And so what our system does, not only do we tell you what issues you have today with your computer systems, we also tell you by using some clever artificial intelligence, by monitoring information in the dark web and also on the public internet, we can actually monitor information about some of the latest threats that are coming through, and we relay this information back to clients. One of the things, the way that we use EOS and the blockchain is that we believe the best way to deal with the world's largest infrastructure problem, which is hacking, is to use the strength of the community. Now, we all know that EOS is has the best community around. But in regards to resolve this issue, we have to understand for every legitimate white hacker, in other words, a white hat is someone who is allowed to break into systems on behalf of a company, there are at least 10 black hats. So these are 10 people on the outside that are trying to break in systems illegally. So the best way that we can tackle this problem is by working with people on the outside that aren't necessarily qualified but know what they're talking about when it comes to computer security, and bring them all together using the power of the blockchain. So as I mentioned before, we obviously go out onto the public internet and also the dark web looking for new threats and vulnerabilities, and this is completely revolutionary. And the whole idea of this solution is not just to work with enterprises. The aim of this solution in Uncloak is to work with companies regardless of their size. So for example, 96% of companies around the world are less than 25 members of staff. And it's very important that we provide services because you are only as strong as your weakest link. Smaller businesses are interfacing and working with larger businesses. And so if a small business has a security issue, it's going to cause issues up to that large business. And so we want to work with cybersecurity throughout businesses regardless of their size. Some of the ways that we use EOS is permissioned access. So for example, after we've performed a scan with a client, we'll basically place a very small amount of information after we've stripped away information like IP address and anything that is associated with that customer. We are then able to put the software version within the blockchain. And then we have a group of ethical hackers, and we also work with Adecco, so we're partnered with Adecco. So if we don't have enough hackers internally, we can go to Adecco, who are able to provide us with a set of ethical hackers. And then what we do with that information, we're able to look for some new vulnerabilities and push all this information back to the client. Okay, we're already working with Adecco. I've got someone on the right looking at me. Okay, so I'm about to finish off. So we have a full ecosystem, vulnerability scan, and we have a threat bounty, so we work with a whole community. And the best way to tackle this solution is by working with the community out there and making sure that we can help companies to be a lot more secure. Thank you very much.